So in this video, we're going to look at how strings and their individual characters are numbered and how we can use those numbers to access different parts of a string. So the first thing you need to understand that each character within a string receives a number, okay, called an index number. Okay, so the capital W is our first character in the string, but it receives the number 0. So it's 0 numbering, just like we always do in programming. So W is at index 1. This lowercase e would be W is at index 0, because we always start at 0. The E is at index 1. The L is at index 2, so on and so forth, all the way up to the exclamation point, which is one less. Its index number will be one less than the total length of the array because we started at 0, right? And I don't want to go through and count these right now, but I will show you how to find the length itself. So because my string is an object, we can access some of its methods and properties. And one of its methods, if we go look at, let's look at our string documentation, okay, is length. Right there it is. The length method returns the length of this string. If we click on this, we can go in here and it tells us a little bit more details. This one doesn't have a whole lot of details because it's not that complicated. Returns the length of this string. The length is equal to the number of Unicode code units in the string. Basically the number of characters. So let's actually use that length method of the string. Let's print out my string, and I'm going to change this to dot length. And because length is a method, I put the parentheses. It's a method that doesn't require us to supply it any parameters, and that will tell us how long this particular string is. Let's run this. This particular string is 23 characters long. So it is numbered from 0 for the capital W all the way up to 22, which is one less than its length. Okay, so 0 through 22 would be the index numbers to access each individual item in our string. So let's use that along with another method. Since we know they're numbered 0 through 22, let's try and get an individual character out of that string. So I am going to try to get, using another method, let's actually create another variable to hold this. This is going to be a char variable, an individual character, and I'm just going to call it my char equals take my string, and I'm going to call one of its methods. I am going to call character, charAt, excuse me, and for character at, we have to provide it. Let's actually go look at this method in the, let's find character at. So if I come up here to the top, charAt, and we have to give it an index number. So it says that we have to supply an index number to look at an individual character, and it returns the character value at the specified index. So I'm going to say charAt, let's look at, well, let's do 0 to begin with. Okay, and down here we're going to just print out that character, my char. Okay. Put a semicolon on this. Okay, so let's take my string, which is welcome to programming, and look at the character at position 0, which we've already established is going to be this capital W. So I get that character and I assign it to this variable called my char, and I'm going to print it out. And here we go, and it tells us the character at 0 is a capital W. Let's do the character at 22. Okay. And that gives us the exclamation point because we said they were numbered from index 0 up to index 22 because the total length was 23. How about the P right there? 0, 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. It looks like that's 11. Character add 11. See what happens. And we get the P. The capital P. So that's how character at works. Now, I just went through and counted to find out where that P was. But there's a more efficient way to do that using another method. We are going to do, what method do I want to use for that? We are going to use indexOf. Let's go back here. We'll go down and find the method indexOf. IndexOf, and we have to supply it with a character. Let's click on that and it gives us more details. It's going to return an integer to us to tell us the index of whatever character we specify. Notice down here there's another version of indexOf that tells us a character, and we get to specify where we want to start looking. So let's see how we use the indexOf. Instead of me having to count up to find that P character, let's use indexOf. So let's declare a variable called int position equals my string dot indexOf, and notice our autocomplete is helping us out here. IndexOf, and I have to give it a character, or I can give it a string. IndexOf, and I want to find the P. And down here, I'm going to print the position. So this will take the string, which was set to my string, and it'll find the index of the P and store it in this variable called position, and then we're going to print out the position. And that tells us 11. Okay, so I can actually use a method to find out what position a character is. Now, how about the lowercase value m? What if I tell it to look for a lowercase value m? Because if we look in here, there's an m here, but there's also a lowercase m there, and there's also a lowercase m there. What's going to happen if I ask for the index of the lowercase m? Okay. And it tells me at position 5, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is where the lowercase m is at. All right, so it doesn't tell me about these later ones. What if I tell it indexOf, and I tell it, let's look starting at index 6. All right, so let's look at the m, look for a lowercase m, but we're not going to start until index 6, which, since this was index 5, it's going to start looking at the e here. And now it finds 17, which is the position of this m. Okay, so with this indexOf, we can tell it to not start start looking at a certain position, and it always gives us the first occurrence that it finds from our starting position. And if we don't specify a starting position, it starts at 0. One other thing I want to point out, I've been using these methods and storing the results and then printing the results. But I can use those results immediately if I don't have a reason to store them. So if I wanted to print out my string index of m, I could put that right in my print line statement. And then I don't really need the variable to store it anymore. Okay, so here we have a string, my string, called welcome. That says welcome to programming, and I'm just printing out directly my string index of lowercase m, and it tells me 5. So remember, anytime you call a method that returns a value, okay, you have to either take that value and store it so that you can access it later, or you can do something with it, like in this case printing it out, but then I have no way to access it again later. I can't keep talking about that position because I didn't store it in a variable. So remember that value returning methods always require you to either store the results for use later or make use of the results. But what I don't want to do is just call a method like this and do nothing with it. Okay? Because if I call a method like that and I don't do anything with it, the results just disappear. Okay? I didn't store it in a variable, so I don't have a variable to use here. I can't print it out directly because it's not inside the print statement. And it warns me, hey, I need to assign, we're returning a value. You need to assign it to a variable. And it actually gives me an option to create a new variable for it. And it created an index of my m, or you got to give it some kind of variable name. We used result when we did it. Okay. So your IDE tries to give you a hint to remind you that, hey, you're calling a method that returns a value. What are you going to do with it? In this case, we'll reuse the variable by printing it out.